Great.
Andre, come up to the front row. Craig, have you met Andres?
Yeah, I do, Andre. Yeah, I do.
His friend, Jeff.
Nice to see you. Yes, hi. All right. Good morning. Thanks, you know. I'll try. Every day's an effort.
What's up, man? Nice to meet you, buddy.
How far has my career sunk of being covered by Charlie Lang?
Oh, dear God. Oh, okay. Right.
I mean, he thinks it's funny now.
Oh, yeah.
But at the time, I don't realize
John. What's up, boss? How are you? Craig, are you going to be good with me here? I'll move that stuff. Are you going to be good with me there or not? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to.
I remember those days.
That's why I'm wondering. Stuff you do smell like skunk. What they do?
Those are. That's what they told me.
Hannah.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you? Okay. I could do without it.
That's up to you. You want to do it?
If he wants it, I could do without it.
The clue is going to be
Do you have two? Or you the only? Yeah, later.
Let me out, and then you're gonna go in. Okay, now you go. Sorry, Bill, did you want
As you can see, we have no reporter.
Morning, how are you?
And they're gonna wait till the last minute and get screwed.
Okay, you're gonna have to arm wrestle the ATM. Check out. I prefer you.
Okay.
Sounds like a son of the sheriff's Yeah, it's actually okay.
Yeah, he's got the one girl.
Okay, I'll have it.
That's good.
Audio, we have that off for now?
rule, but I'm going to say it all over again, because it seems like nobody can read. Outside the door, there are many signs. Let me get on the record here, so if anybody wants to see me. Okay, we are on the record of People versus VanCallis. Are we ready to proceed, gentlemen?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
And for the audience's sake, sit down, relax. There are many signs out in that front door that say no cameras allowed. No cameras are allowed except the media who has already given me an order. Please do not stand up during these closing arguments and take snapshots and put it on your Facebook. That's not what this is about. Respect the attorneys. It's very difficult for them. They got to remember a whole lot of things, and to have you walking around taking pictures is an annoyance to them and a distraction. So please respect them. They work really hard, and also respect this process. So unless you're part of the media, if I see you with the camera, if I see you with the cell phone, the deputies will immediately take it from you. So, don't come squawking when that happens. I'm giving you fair warning. Also, please keep your traffic down in and out. I understand if you need to leave in between, that's fine. But please try to keep that at a minimum, because that's also very distracting to the attorneys when they're giving their closings. We are ready to proceed, and apparently Mr. Daly and Mr. Sheik, there is an agreement that you are going to allow for the admission of a few more documents.
Judge, we have some documents on People's Exhibit 186, 187, and 188. 186 is sport tracker data, 187 is call detail records, and 188 drive test data. These were all previously given in discovery, and I also provided an additional copy to counsel this morning. And yes, we are asking the court's discretion to allow us to admit those at this time by stipulation.
So I know we did receive them, we did review them, and we did discuss them. We have no objection to
That
that.
is 186 and 87.
188.
Okay, you're going to need to do that again with the jurors when they come in,
I will
so
do
that
that.
they know that they've been admitted.
Yes.
And I guess we're ready to proceed. Anything else?
No.
I do have my jury instructions.
Yes.
You are in agreement with those jury instructions?
Yes,
We are.
Your Honor.
Okay, bring the jury out. I think we're going to need to take a break after the opening from the prosecutor. Give you about 10 minutes. I have a juror that's indicated they may have some issues. So we'll take a break after the prosecutor.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your day off yesterday. Are you ready to get back to work? Okay, it is my pleasure. We're going to begin with the prosecutor making their opening statement, and after he makes his opening statement, his closing statement, we will proceed then to take a break, and then we'll listen to the defense, and then the prosecutor gets to rebuttal. Mr. Daly, apparently there was an agreement reached between you and Mr. Sheik regarding some evidence.
Yes, Judge, and just for the jury's edification, there are 3 additional exhibits. They are records. 186 is sport tracker data from April Millsap's phone. 187 is call detail records from the defendant. 188 is drive test data that Special Agent Hess used, and they're all admitted by stipulation.
That is true, Your Honor.
And they've all been admitted. Thank you. Are we ready to proceed now, gentlemen, with your closings?
Yes.
You may begin.
things that we know now as the dark arts. A familiar was a spirit that was embodied in the form of an animal to protect and serve its owner and master.
Keep your voice up, please.
Think, if you will, Harry Potter. Harry Potter's familiar was his owl, Hedwig. In this case, Penny was April's familiar in life. And her iPhone is her familiar in death. Penny showed us where the body was, but the iPhone told us who her killer was. And her iPhone told us it's James VanCallis. What did the iPhone tell us? First, it told us where she was murdered. We have that GPS on the path. Second, it told us when she was murdered, at approximately 6:30 or 6:31 on July 24th of 2014. It told us where to find her backpack, as you saw from Agent Zent's recreation through that blue line on that visual, how the motorcycle went up through the path and crossed back into town. And just as importantly, it told us who did not commit this murder. This murder was not committed by somebody on foot. This murder was not committed by somebody riding a bike. Because as you know, people like Land and Buchanan, who ride regularly, got to a maximum speed of approximately 17 miles per hour. The Zent GPS graphic showed you that the average speed was 34 miles per hour, spiking towards 40. We know it wasn't a white van because there was no white van seen on the path or anywhere near the Orchard Trail. And it damn sure wasn't a border collie. What it was a motorcycle. James VanCallis' motorcycle. A motorcycle you've come to see during our proofs, and I'm going to show you in an uninterrupted fashion, that was so unique in its modifications that it became a fingerprint, that it became unique. And that unique fingerprint is owned by James VanCallis. That motorcycle was at the murder with James VanCallis. He was the one who brutally, without reason or shame, stomped April Millsap to death. We know that because the cycle took a path that no other vehicle could take. And we also know that the person that was riding that motorcycle was unique in his knowledge of the area. Because when you see that upper part of Exhibit 33, which I will show you, there's only one road that leads you to Armada Ridge. And it's amazing the number of turns that were made and specifically went to that road. And when the bike from Cost matches the bike at the gas station, which the defense has indicated is James VanCallis, matches the one that we took, is there any doubt left? It told us where her phone could be found, and it also took us past that line, even though Cost turned over that video. The Zent's graphic shows us the picture and confirms the other pictures from the Marathon gas station that it is the right bike. And we're going to show you those pictures in a few minutes. I'm also going to show you rear pictures, and we're going to compare on high def the motorcycles, the unique fingerprint owned in this case by James VanCallis. But first, let's talk about the premeditation aspect of first degree. There are 4 charges. The first 2 that I want to deal with, the one we're going to deal with right now, is premeditated murder. The instruction is an instruction that you've already received a couple of times, and it's going to be read to you, it's going to be handed to you. This was Hollywood, it would have happened a little fast. Or maybe if I decided to carry the thing, but I don't. The first ones are basic. Cause of death of April Millsap by blunt force trauma and asphyxia. We'll talk about that in just a second. Number 2, is that it was an intent to kill Millsap. There's no doubt about that. Number 3, again, with premeditation. Number 4 is the one that I really want you to consider. I'll read it with you. The killing was deliberate, which means the defendant considered the pros and cons of the killing and thought about and chose his actions before he did it. There must have been real and substantial reflection for long enough to give a reasonable person a chance to think twice about the intent to kill. The law does not say how much time is needed. That's for you to decide. We talked about that. It can be as little as seconds or as long as it took to plan the 9/11 bombing. That's up for you to decide. We're going to talk about that 3 to 5 minute gap, which is where the premeditation was formed, in just a second. Killing cannot be the result of a sudden impulse without thought or reflection, and that's going to go to the second theory that we have about the amount of time it took to commit that murder. But going back to the facts, it's sort of hard to lay out what our theory is. Could we go to black on that for just a second? It's kind of hard to lay out the theory in opening statements or through witnesses when you have to constantly have the back and forth. But let me construct for you how we looked at the evidence and how this crime happened. The information also that we learned from her phone, which is critical, is that text at 6:28. I almost got kidnapped. OMFG, oh my effing God. That tells us very clearly that prior to that text that she sent to Austin, she had been assaulted. She had been confronted. She had in some way likely been grabbed and escaped. Because if you follow Zentz's path, when she is coming down that path, she's going 2.2 miles per hour. When she turns around and heads back, she's doubled her speed to 4.4 miles per hour. All of the witnesses told you, and we'll see you just in a second on another graphic, that they all thought the same thing. She was tense. Something wasn't right. They all said there was something wrong. He wasn't successful that first time. He had to come back and try a second time. That's what's critical. That 3 minutes between 6:28 when she made that text to the point where she got just past the Liberty Trail at 6:30 to 6:31. He figured it out. How is he going to do it? This time he grabs his helmet and he hits her on the top of the head, at which point the helmet falls. Her phone goes to the ground. You saw the distance that he had, that very short time distance in that tunnel of trees. He's got to get her off the path at this point. So now he picks up the phone, he puts it in his pocket, he picks up his helmet, and he picks up her. She's also dropped the leash because you've seen the picture and how small she is. This helmet you saw from Dr. Petrangelo in this spot here knocked her silly blunt force trauma right there in the face. He has to grab her, the phone, and the body, and he hauls it into the crowded area, that one small space. But now he's got two problems. Number one, he's got her phone in his pocket, and he's got the dog. In dealing with the phone first, those 3 phone numbers mean nothing to this case. You heard Detective MacArthur. She looked at 7 months' worth of records of VanCallis and of April. April only had one 810 number that she dialed. That number goes to a company that isn't using that phone number. It exists, but it's not answered. This is a butt dial. Every one of us that has an Android phone or a phone with this sort of face has done that. We've dialed somebody and we didn't know. We either hit redial or it came up with a new number. That's what those 3 numbers represent. No connection whatsoever to this case. But now he's got a second problem. He knows when he has taken her off the path that she may still at some level be alive. So when he brings her over, first thing he's going to do is stomp her. All about her head, all about her chest. Because he can't afford to have her get up now. He can't have her get up and identify him or start screaming. He knows that path isn't completely empty just by the 5 witnesses we brought so far. That's not all the other ones. There were people on that path that could see him. He had to silence her so that she wouldn't scream out and have him get caught. But now he's got a second problem, and that's the dog. And that dog, though she may not have been able to prevent the death, as April's familiar, by God, she wasn't going to leave her to die alone. That dog probably whimpering at which point. Now remember on Zen's text, remember his graphic, when the motorcycle had left, there were 2 places on the road that came to a stop for 30 seconds. One before Cossa's house, then one just out of Cossa's range. And if you remember on that graphic, when that motorcycle is still, when that phone is still, it didn't move. But remember, when that 14 minutes of that murder, that phone was going like this. What's he doing? He's chasing down the dog. He knows he's got to silence that dog, or that dog is going to alert somebody on the path that he's there and she's almost dead and he wants to rape her. He doesn't want to get caught. So he's probably at some point able to grab the leash on the dog, but like most dogs, if you have just a regular leash, it's slipped up over the head, because when Penny is found, there's no collar and there's no leash. He had gotten it. But probably by now, Penny is simply whimpering. So one of those little squiggles, he probably goes back to the path and looks left and right to see if anybody's coming. And nobody's coming. So he goes back and he starts to do what he wanted to do all along. First thing he does is he comes up, he grabs her shoes, and just throws the shoes behind him. Goes up to her top, pulls that tank top down, takes that bra, rips it off, moves down to her pants. Starts to unbutton them, pulls her pants all the way down. Here's a sound. He sees Amy Spinella. Remember Amy's testimony, she saw the eyes. He looked like he had his hands in a cookie jar and got caught. That's why they're like this, because that's what he does. Now he knows he can't stay. Now he knows he can't finish, because he's been seen, and the panic starts all over again. So he grabs her iPhone, grabs her backpack with all the stuff in it, grabs the leash, grabs his helmet, gets on his bike, and he leaves. Drops the backpack off. Conveniently goes around. And gets out of the scene. You had a rare opportunity in this case to see something most juries don't get to see. And that is, you got to see Mr. VanCallis' volatility. Remember when Bill Buchanan was standing here and they were doing that god-awful supposed test, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, because I find it odd, because here you are lower than he is, and you're supposed to be able to see up over that, okay? God. Anyways, Bill Buchanan is standing here very quiet. He's going, no, you've got to put the helmet down. You've got to pull that helmet down. Now the helmet's too high up, you've got to pull that helmet down. Then here's VanCallis. I bought it that way! Shut up! Put it in these terms. In front of 12 people, 14 of you now, 12 people who will eventually decide his fate. In front of 4 armed deputies. Remember, we had to remove you before we brought him out and get more security, because it's very difficult to bring somebody accused of murder that close to a jury. 4 armed deputies, 2 more armed investigators behind me. 3 cameras showing this case to the world. And when things don't go his way, and when Mr. Buchanan tells him, no, you're doing it wrong, what does he do? He turns around and he yells at the judge. So you tell me, what chance did April Millsap have as a small 14-year-old girl on an isolated stretch of the Orchard Trail when she rejected his advances and told him no? It earned her being stoned to death. So, what is... Well, hold on a second. So let's go back now to... Put the phone thing back up, if you would. Let's go back to premeditation. You saw the instruction. You get to be the determinant of the time. I would say to you the first assault on her happens at 6:26 or 6:27 before, in fact, she makes that text. And we know from Dr. Petrangelo that she has bruises under her arms. We have to wonder if he had grabbed her and attempted to move her in and she got away that first time and moved quickly up the path. But at 6:28 is when she makes that text. And at 6:30, she's in the bushes being murdered. That 3 to 5 minutes, especially after he failed the first time to kidnap her, he formulated a new plan that included the helmet for the assault. That's the time for that premeditation. Now, the second theory is the time theory that we talked about a little bit in jury selection. That instruction shows you that you have a chance to take a look at it and think of it in terms of reflection and second thought. Case law is very clear. Because this is not a gunshot or a knife wound, there is time for a reflection, especially in suffocation and strangulation cases where it takes minutes to die. Courts have said that you have the chance to use as premeditation the time it takes for a person to die, because it gives a chance for the defendant to have second thoughts or reflections on what's happening. Dr. Petrangelo told you that it took her approximately 10 minutes to die. And can you imagine the amount of force necessary to crush a larynx and a skull and a chest because he let her suffocate to death? We know that that video is 14 minutes where he is in that area. And the doctor told you that it takes 10 minutes to die. And we know that she was alive during part of it because of 2 photographs from the crime scene. While she's being stoned to death, she's grabbing the leaves around her. And that, my friends, is a tear in her eye. She's unable to act. That time period is premeditation because he did nothing to stop it when he could have. All right, back to what I was saying before. Why is he at the trail? He's at the trail because of that YouTube search that he did. July 18th, 6 days before the murder. These are the most important ones. I don't need to show you all. He's been doing it for months now, as you saw. Most important, why would this girl say, I'm too old for her and still hit on me? Why would this girl say, I'm too old for her and still hit on me? girls say, I'm too old for her and still hit on me? Do young girls like older men? How to make a girl that does not want you to want you? I guess, I don't know if there is, why is this girl ignoring that? I don't know if he looked up at YouTube as to say, you know, the use of a helmet is a way to get a girl's attention. And the two I didn't put up here, remember, in the same day, he was looking up hypnosis. Hard to hypnotize somebody when you've knocked them out. But we know a couple of things from that day from his phone. We know that he was in Armada, and we know it several ways. First off, we have his phone at 6:39, 5:39, I mean, clicking, going along Armada Ridge to the second call at 17:39, and then we come down here to Romeo, where maybe he went to, I guess, the Tim Hortons, but then we have it coming back. So, first thing we know is at 18:04, at 6:04 p.m., he is in the village of Armada. Now we know from the statements he made to Packman that he is in, at that time, the village of Armada. We know from the defense presented here at the Marathon gas station, they're saying that's him in the village of Armada. And we know by looking at that video, that motorbike, which he says is him on it, will match the cost one. And we're going to do that in a few minutes, because that unique fingerprint, if that's him on that bike there, that's him on the cost video. That's him that did the murder. So, we also know from his phone records at 6:14 and at 6:17, he's making a phone call. All right? We know that the Marathon, this is what the band that Agent Hess put together. We know at the gas station, the Marathon gas station is right there. Armada is that area. He makes two phone calls. You heard from Higginson, the first call was very short, may not have been picked up, but you heard from Higginson, the second call was 142 on his phone, 131 on Donnie's phone. That phone is not a voicemail, he picks it up, and they have a conversation. Well, what's the conversation? Conversation is, hey, I got a gift for you. We know he said that because that's what Donnie said. I got a gift for you, I want to bring it over. What time are you going to be home from work? Well, I don't know, I'm not home yet, but I can let you know. All right, hey, the girls coming? Are they bringing the dope? I want to buy some marijuana. Yeah, the girls will be here. The girls will be here after you get here. So, hey, so I'll let you know when I get home. Yeah, do me a favor. Text me when you get home. Click. Because we know that Donnie's text to him at 6:44 is one word. Home. We know from their defense that he's pulling out of that gas station at about 6:18 p.m. So let's play this. Here's the Marathon station, 6:16. We can just let it run at its regular time. In a few seconds, you will see a couple of bodies. The two ladies that ride by here eventually, those are Amy and Gail Spinella. But again, Armada, now it's 6:17. Here goes the motorcycle. Stop it right there for a second. No, it's wrong button. All right, let's get a little bit ahead. I want to show you some of the specifics about this motorcycle. Here we go. First of all, you can see the big helmet right there. See the lights right there. He puts down white tennis shoes. White tennis shoes. Now watch. We're going to stop it right in this frame right here. Remember, you can't go left there. Bang, stop it. There's that white fender that we've seen. There's the non-existent fender, which is that black fender. And there's that helmet. We will show that in a different blow-up later on. But that photograph is clear that that's the same bike that we see in the other one. Now, he goes down that way, and he comes back around. We don't need to play that. But then he goes down Church Street. Let's go to the next one. Obviously, his brother's not home. He has time to waste, I guess, as opposed to using the more graphic term. So he comes off of that and he goes down Church Street. Now we know that he knows that East Main Street or Armada Ridge goes to his brother's house because he's been down it already. there is no reason to go down Church Street unless you're going to the trail. And we know at 6:18 or 6:19 he comes around and he's going down Church Street, and at 6:25, 6:26 by the Reschkes, by the Spinellas, by the Steins, by Mr. Buchanan, he's seen on the path. He didn't leave town by turning onto Fulton Street, and we know that for two reasons, because he's seen on the path over here before the murder, and we know that Detective MacArthur watched hours of security video from this business and this business as to Fulton Road, and there were never any videos of that motorcycle or any motorcycle going by at that time. So, regardless, he's over here. What I said before, when you get into this maze here, coming off, as he did, onto Church Street after the murder, there are two ways to get to North Main. You could take any one of these streets or any one of these cuts and not make it. Only somebody who knew that neighborhood would know to come up, go down, come down here, come down, come around, and go specifically on Madison Street to get to East Main. Only somebody that lived in that neighborhood, knows that street, would be able to do that. So we know that he is, in fact, on the path at that time. I want to debunk a couple of myths about this case. First of all, I guess, who does Mr. VanCallis think he is, like Al Capone or John Gotti or El Chapo, that we did a backwards investigation, that we decided when we found April Millsap's body that we're going to simply pin it on him? That for some, I mean, Chief Smith has been there for 8.5 years, had never heard of the name James VanCallis, didn't know who he is. We worked backwards. We decided to find a pair of shoes, match those shoes, know that he had a pair of those shoes, and then match those shoes to him, find somebody in the area who owns a motorcycle, and say, hey, he's got a motorcycle. Let's pin it on him. Really? Really? I mean, what is all this? 1,000 tips. 1,000 tips. 75 investigators working full-time for weeks to find 1,000 tips. Each tip was looked at. Each tip was investigated. Each tip on here has a conclusion indicating what was done, where it was done, and how it was closed out. How about the fact that Armada Village is small, so that they went to every house and every business in Armada Village and asked questions and filled out surveys, getting information. What about a rolling stop or a roadblock where they stopped hundreds and hundreds of people? There may have been tips coming in on James VanCallis at the time, and those were sent to a special unit. But they didn't avoid any other tip. They didn't stop looking. They spent months investigating every possible clue to be certain that there were no mistakes. And is there a lack of physical evidence in this case? Remember what Kozlowski said. Absence of evidence does not mean evidence of absence. And that's pretty damn certain when, in fact, you've destroyed all of the evidence. When you come home after stomping some young girl to death with your shoes that are this size, that have this type of cleat, and then clean it with hand sanitizer, and then put them in a box and get rid of the box. What about the helmet? You saw the helmet. You saw the photographs of this helmet. You saw how messy that house was? OCD my ass. Okay? The only clean thing in that house was this helmet. And you saw all the streaks on it. Because he cleaned off the DNA, cleaned off April. In fact, he did such a nice job, even his DNA wasn't on the helmet. And then he takes his Carhartt hoodie, something that would have had blood spatter on it from moving her body, and he throws it out. And then you take the pants, and you wash the pants, and you get rid of those. And then you take the clump of hair that could have been April's hair, and you take that off the sink, and you throw it out. Yes, There is no physical evidence, but it certainly wasn't for lack of trying. We can't get to what he's already thrown out before we know it's him. So yes. And at the same point, what is this? There's no DNA. There can't be a case. Science is used to enhance police work, not replace it. I'm sorry. Was there a criminal justice system before the 1990s when science came about? Were there not convictions in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s when there was nothing but circumstantial evidence? We don't even know how the pyramids were made. We don't even know why Stonehenge exists. But we know the law allows us to present circumstantial evidence in this case. But I will tell you something about DNA and physical evidence. You heard from the experts from the Michigan State Police that in fact at the vast majority of crime scenes no evidence is left. And you want real life examples of that? How about the fact that we've got that helmet? And that helmet is worn every day, and I'll bet all VanCallis did was clean off the top of it. He didn't clean off the interior. And he wears that helmet on and off, day after day after day. The best that we could do with DNA is simply not exclude him from that helmet. What about the hand sanitizer? Something he's supposed to use every day, and Crystal uses every day. His DNA is not on it, her DNA is not on it, no fingerprints are on it. Same with the Windex bottle. Something he uses every day. He doesn't leave any DNA, he doesn't leave any prints on it. Same with April's phone. We have a smudge print, no DNA, nothing. Yet it's something she uses every day. Proof, what the experts are saying. Just because you touch something, because you handle something, because you have something, you don't leave a trace. I wish we would have been able to get something off the foot pegs on his motorcycle. Either it didn't happen or he'd cleaned it. But there was DNA in two spots there should never have been DNA on a 14-year-old girl. There was DNA, male DNA on her shorts, and male DNA on her tank top. It may not have been enough to give us a sample, as you heard Andrea Young talk about. She did the YSTR. There's a Y chromosome there. It's male, just not enough to give us an identification. So there was some physical evidence. So what am I supposed to do? Not bring a case? No DNA? We just let people go? There's a bumper sticker that I see on trucks all the time. It says, red, white, and blue. These colors don't run. Well, neither do we. This is a strong, significant, circumstantial case with a tremendous amount of evidence that says Mr. James VanCallis is the murderer of April Millsap. Now let's look at a timeline. Mr. Land's testimony is very important for one particular reason. Mr. Land comes through at 6:47 by the granary. Zent's graphic display of her phone has that motorcycle, has VanCallis crossing onto Depot Street and onto Church Street at approximately also 6:47. He did not see a motorcycle. That's how close, within seconds of them passing one another on the trail. We know that Amy Spinella makes her identification at about, at some point, but at the same spot. Sedais make the 911 call at 8:19. The Steins, according to theirs, see her at 6:26, just on the edge of coming up towards the Orchard Trail. That's almost the exact same spot on the GPS of April's text, which is at 6:28 p.m. So right here, remember the Orchard Trail is right here, her body is right here. The rescues say, again, she's walking back toward them as they're going east, right about here. The Spinellas say they encountered the motorcycle right about here. And we know that by her own tracker, at 6:23, she has hit this clearing and she has turned around to go back in. 6:24, Mr. Buchanan comes by, and right at that edge, that's where he sees VanCallis. Next. These are those photographs we talked about. The murder spot is right here, this little dirt spot. This is the Liberty Trail. So let's look at passengers. Let's right sort of here. We'll see it in just a second. But this photograph was taken looking down from Liberty Trail to there. This photograph was taken at the murder spot looking down, heading east. Just so that you get an idea when we're talking about the isolation, when we talk about after the assault, he's looking both ways. He knows he's got limited vision and limited time to do what he needs to do. But that's a spot where it's clear that on that whole path, it's on that curve, a slightly greater limited eyesight area. Before we start talking about the eyewitness identification, which is a big part of our case, I want you to see the instruction that you're going to be handed in your path. How good a chance the witness had to see the offender at the time. How long the witness was watching. Whether the witness had seen or known the offender before. Which, in fact, other than the Reshi's seeing April. How far away the witness was. Whether the area was well lighted. And what was the witness's state of mind at the time. That becomes important for both Buchanan and Stein. Also, Amy Spinella. Also think about the circumstances at the time of the identification. How much time had passed. How sure the witness was of the identification. State of mind during the identification. And then you also may consider times when the witness failed to identify, make an identification, give a description that didn't agree with the description during trial. The next photograph is very pertinent to the difference between the Steins and the Spinellas. Stein and Buchanan and Spinella. Like the bumper sticker says, do I have a discrepancy? Yes. But I ain't running from it. I'm admitting it, and I'm going to explain to you why it's in fact not really much of a discrepancy when you analyze the facts that went into both identifications and understand the context of both identifications. So for this purpose right now, you see that this is just a sample of what the Buchanans and the Steins are doing as they're coming up. You can see that there are no distractions to what they're looking at as they move through and up and upon somebody. Where when Miss Spinella goes past, you have not only distance, you have foliage, and we'll talk about the fear in just a second. But I think Amy Spinella should be given some credit in her testimony here. There's an old Indian proverb that says, once you come to a fork in the road, you can take either the path of conscience or the path of convenience. She came to this court and she took the path of conscience. How easy would it have been for her to just simply say, because there's no way anybody could have done anything different, say, well, my composite wasn't as nice or wasn't as good, or maybe I made a mistake in the composite, but that's the person I saw on the path. She didn't do that. She took the path of conscience. She wouldn't say it was him, but she couldn't say it wasn't him. And what we're left with in her testimony is essentially her composite. And I'm going to put that composite up. And we're going to compare that composite to a couple of photographs. And I think you're going to see by the time it's all done, what you've heard is in fact not that good. And what you're going to see is in fact that composite's a lot stronger than you were led to believe. Well, let's go first to the Steins and the Buchanan identification. The factors that are important in their identification. The first factor I don't know much about computers, but somebody did this for us. Distance. I'm going to show you the motorcycle photo video again in a few minutes with Sandra on it that was taken at the house. So you can see just how far away you could actually see that light so that you know what Buchanan was talking about. But if you picture yourself on a bike on that path, what you have is as you're coming up, even though you might be at 12, 14 miles an hour, you're going from far to near. You're coming up on that person. Those individuals, there was nothing in between them and the person that they saw. And again, give Doug Stein credit. Doug Stein could have come up here and said, hey, yeah, I was with Mary, I dipped in behind, but I saw him, but he didn't do that. These are not people that wanted to be involved in this case. These are not people. Do I bring up the issue of education? Yes, because Buchanan and Stein are educated. But is it simply because of education that I bring them up? No, what it does is, as Mary Stein said, it helps to articulate more effectively what they saw. They're not gang members. They're not street thugs. They're not involved. They're not victims. They're just simply saying, this is what I saw. I happened to be at this place at that time. But because of their articulation, their ability to think back, and their lack of wanting to see something happen other than this is what I saw, that's what the education means. It means the ability to simply to come here and do what's right. Certainly not because they want to, with all these cameras in their faces and everything else that goes with this case. Next. Time. The time will vary, but the distance on the bike, regardless, is that time it takes to get from here to there or there and beyond. But that whole time they're looking at one thing, that person. 3. What makes this and their identifications more understandable and accurate is they were not happy. None of them had ever seen a motorcycle on the path before, and they didn't like it. That path is for pedestrians and bikes, and now there's a motorcycle on it, some punk on a motorcycle. So now they have to look at it and calculate the next move. Is that guy going to come across? Is he going to stay on the right-hand side? What's he going to do as I approach? So, of course, now they're actually really focused on him, because they have to figure out whether they're going to move, whether they're going to go left or whether they're going to go right, which is even more of a reason to be staring right at that person. 4. There were no distractions. You can see the lighting. It's still the middle of the day. It's still bright. There's nothing between all of those witnesses and the motorcycle as they came upon it. Nothing. And 5, they pass within feet as they're on that path, which is only, as you can see, about this wide, and they're elbow to elbow, as Mary said, this close, the ability to stare right at you as they come by and move past. And 6, 10 out of 10. The certainty was 10 out of 10. Now, in Mary Stein's situation, she was at some level dissatisfied, having spoken to her cousin, thinking that there was going to be a lineup so she could come in and do a lineup. She was told she'd have a role in the composite, told that she could look at the composite first. But it didn't happen. The composite was released. What's the first thing that she does when that composite is released? She calls Donahue, the officer who came and spoke to her, and said, I saw the composite. There's a couple problems with it. The hair's not right. He looks too young. That's not who I saw. Immediately after, not waiting, not looking ahead, immediately after she makes that complaint. But there's nothing that can be done. As you heard from Becky MacArthur, they're only going to do one composite. They only had one composite artist. You can't have one composite artist do 2 different people on the same case. Did she go online after the arrest? Yes. But you have to then judge her credibility. Do you believe that she just simply went online and said, hey, that person's arrested, that's who I saw, that's who I'm going to say was it? She is so nervous and concerned about being right, and so pained about knowing how important what she saw is to the Millsap family, to the Armada community, to everybody, that she wants to be certain. Immediately upon seeing him arrested, then she goes on the internet and she says, yes, yes, that's him. And then you have Bill Buchanan. If there is an organization called Engineers Anonymous, I will join. because I have been rehabilitated. Geez, was I wrong about engineers. I came to maybe have a change of heart because he was so clear, so unflappable in both his testimony here and in what happened during that test, as to what he saw, why he saw it, and how clear he was about what he saw. And we know what he saw was correct, because Mr. VanCallis gave us a picture of himself from his phone, taken from an elevated position, that shows, oh, what's that? It's a mustache. One that he wouldn't let be seen during this fake example, as Mr. Buchanan was trying to say. The lights are wrong, the path is wrong, there's no speed, the height is wrong, everything was wrong about that. But it really didn't matter, because in a picture he took of himself, you see his mustache. Moving on. These are some generalities. I've talked a little bit about most of them, but I love lists. And I wanted you to see the lists of what people said during this trial. All of the eyewitnesses, 201, indicated they thought that they were together. They were boyfriend and girlfriend, stepfather or older boyfriend. But something was wrong. They all said something was wrong. It looked like they'd had a fight. She looked tense. She had a tight smile. They were close together, then she turned and walked away from him. And April was always looking down at her phone. The description of VanCallis was pretty much consistent. Everybody said the same thing. He was not dressed appropriately for the path. He was not in exercise clothing. And he was not dressed in clothing that was appropriate for the weather. He was not friendly, that he ignored everybody. Camel pants become really important, because he indicates that he's wearing camel pants. Crystal indicates that he's wearing camel pants. And Mary Stein, in her first statement to the officers, that one that she wrote out, indicated that she thought he was wearing camel pants. She got here to court, she said, well, it could have been camel, it could have been long, dark pants. But her first, within a day, was camel pants. They all basically indicated he had long, dark pants at some level and a shirt. They all said they could not see any skin showing. High-top tennis shoes are very important in this case, because as you recall, the K-Swiss, especially the black and white ones, which become the focus of our case now, are in fact high tops. And they're very white, which is why you can see them in those motorcycle shots. And Gail Spinella told you that the person was wearing high-top tennis shoes. You've seen the photographs. I'm going to show you more in a second. The K-Swiss shoes are in evidence. They are not high-top tennis shoes. Everybody saw that full black ace helmet. Descriptions of the motorcycle become very consistent. No one had ever seen one on the path before. They all agreed it was an enduro-type bike, an off-road motorcycle. Reschke had the colors as blue and white. Gail Spinella had it black, blue, and chrome. Chrome, which could be mistaken for white. But again, the key factor is the blue and the light colored, and we all know that black fender. Crystal said it was that motorcycle, which we know is blue, black, and white. And in fact, the defendant said he was on this motorcycle that day, which we know is blue, black, and white. The motorcycle was not loud. I'm going to play that for you again at a more reasonable level to show you, in fact, that motorcycle was not that loud. So Reschke is correct. Buchanan is correct. Motorcycle, very smooth, soft, not like those Harleys that you hear going up and down your street that you can hear for a half mile away. Everybody was certain male rider was male, not female, younger, tall, and at some level thin. Whether you want to say 180 pounds at 6'1" or 200 pounds at 6'1". On that frame, you've seen him stand up a number of times. That's the frame. Next. Let's talk a little bit about what Amy Spinella saw. First of all, you have to incorporate the fact that she too is going about 10 or 12 miles an hour. But instead of coming head on and staring at somebody, she is just simply riding on a bike, hears a dog, and looks to the right, which is this. What she sees strikes fear into her, which is why she told her mom, Gail, we got to get going, don't stop, we're going home. Because whatever she saw, whatever innate emotion she felt, it was a base instinct of fear. The distance was far greater because on the path they passed within feet of one another. This is clearly going to be at a minimum of 4 or 5 feet to there and then 15 to 20 feet in. You've got the foliage right here. Yeah, there are some open spots, but there is something directly in the way. But all 3 of them were clear on one thing, and that is the eyes. They all saw the eyes. Buchanan, Mary Stein, and Amy Spinella were locked on those eyes, as you've been locked on for the last 2 weeks. There were the startled movements as part of that fear. So let's show you those composites. This is just simply the straight up shot right off of the composite. That's Amy Spinella's composite from 7/26, which would have been Saturday, and that's Mr. VanCallis' booking photo when he was arrested on 7/30 of 2014. We've isolated the eyes. The eyes match. As clear as the witness has told you, those eyes match. Now let's cut off the hair a little bit. Sides here look pretty consistent. Eyes we already know. Take a look at the ears. The ears are a perfect match. Take a look at the lips. The lips are a perfect match. Take a look at what I had to ask my wife last night what this was. That's a philtrum. Matches. Prominent. Take a look at the space down here in the nose and the width up here. Matches. Look at the shape of the face. How it comes down. Matches. The hair doesn't. There's no facial hair. That composite is not as far off as you would be led to believe. One of our other main witnesses is Crystal Sadler. I think it would have been real easy for Crystal to come in here and just simply say more than she did. She could have come in here and said, he confessed to me. She could have come in here and said, before he got rid of the shoes, I saw blood. She could have come in here and said a lot of different things. She didn't. It's not her place. If anybody knows what it's like to be in the situation that she was in, those who have had or have been themselves victims of domestic violence. Crystal Sadler is a victim of domestic violence. His behavior was physically and verbally abusive, she told you, and controlling. She exhibits all the signs of a battered wife. But she's submissive. She's not vengeful. She had no attitude. She didn't come in here yelling and screaming and wanting a pound of flesh. Was she easily confused? Unfortunately, she was. But I don't certainly think that meant she was lying, or that she fully understood the gravity of everything that was going on. Next. Think about it. These are the living arrangements. They're living in the mother-in-law's quarters in that place. No driver's license, no car, no phone, no computer, no friends, no job, no authority around the house, and she's got 2 small children. Okay. Think about it. This home life is like an episode from Jerry Springer. I agree with Mr. Sheep. No electricity in their portion until it's turned on by the generator. No water unless they turn the generator on. You saw the buckets of water that have to be used for the toilet. Can't use the toilet anytime you want unless there's water there already. No dryer. She's not allowed to use the dryer. Heaven forbid, that would take too much power, because her section of the house is not on the grid. Brenda's section of the house is on the grid. And she has to ask permission to either have the power turned on. There are specific times that she has to use the appliances, because that's controlled also. She's got pigs in the yard, 4 or 5 dogs. You see garbage strewn all over the place. And the living arrangement of James VanCallis' mother with a new husband in one part of the house, her with James and 2 kids in another part of the house, and his father living in separate quarters in the house. Next. She did the best she could. She told you the truth as she remembered it. And this is where your role becomes very important in these cases, because you're the one that judges the credibility. By Mr. She coming up and beating her up and making her confused, does that make her less than she was? Or was she just too complacent when I was asking her questions? You have to make the decision. But I would tell you, based on what you saw and what she said, she was as straightforward as a person that there is. She was the one that clearly showed us his favorite shoes, on those black and white Nike Jordan Flight Power. And what's nice about that is you don't have to take just her word for it, because there was no proof anywhere that these shoes were at her house. Okay? In fact, the defendant's photographs and videos of himself wearing those shoes confirm that those were his favorite shoes, because he wore them and videotaped them all the time. That he wore those shoes on July 24th, 2014. You can tell that by the pictures on the motorcycle, Crystal's testimony, and the tread pattern on the back that matches the tread pattern of the stomping that killed April Millsap. That she indicates that he wore camel pants that day, had a sports t-shirt, and that Carhartt hoodie. Now, the nice thing, if you remember that Carhartt hoodie that we saw in the photograph, and any of you that have either owned a Carhartt or seen a Carhartt or had any type of clothing that had writing on the outside, you know that it's that neoprene rubber stuff, that very reflective stuff. And Carhartts have it on those hoodies. We showed it to you. Big old white letters, Carhartt, all the way down. That is critical in all the photographs we're going to look at in a second of the motorcycle, because you can see that Carhartt jacket in every one of those photographs, that Carhartt writing. She told you critically those black and white shoes disappeared the next day with a box, because in fact when the officers did that search on the 30th, there was no pair of shoes. They were Nike Jordans, gone. They were K-Swiss, of course. She found it odd that he was cleaning his shoes at 2 o'clock in the morning with hand sanitizer. She'd never seen him in the 8.5 years they were together clean his shoes before. Never saw him clean a helmet. He claimed that it was oil. And, I mean, in all honesty, if you took a look at that driveway, which we showed you, if there was oil on it, it had to have been months and months and months ago, because as of that day, there was no oil, no dog crap on that driveway. Clean. And any of us that have worked in cars have spilled oil, or you've been at the gas station when somebody spilled gas in front of you, and they put that gravel stuff down, that stain still stays for an extended period of time. On the 6th day after that murder, there was no way, if there had been any of that, it would have been cleaned up by the time those photographs were taken. His order to her to wash the clothes on that Friday. That clump of hair that she found in the Carhartt hoodie, that because she is who she is too afraid to say anything to him, and just leaves it where he can see it to let him know that she found it. Carhartt hoodie disappears, we know that. Dressed by him the day before she left, that if he got arrested, she would be arrested too. And if you understand the Babbage House, she doesn't ask why, or she doesn't push back why. Because it's not her place in that relationship. I think it's real important that we summarize the VanCallis statements. Critical. I messed up. You need to stand by me. As a batterer He's not about to tell her the reason why. She doesn't need to know the reason why. You do what I tell you. So I'm going to give you just this much. I messed up, but I'm not telling you why. And you're going to need to stand behind me. She doesn't question it. She's afraid of him. Then he tells her to lie. Tell them I was wearing the K-Swiss shoes. We know the statements he makes to Trooper Peckman. He was wearing that Carhartt hoodie. He was wearing that helmet. He was wearing the camo pants. That he stopped at that Marathon gas station. And really, aside from the volatility that we saw here, remember, when he called, Peckman called him the second day on Saturday to say, can you come in and make a statement? He started screaming at him. This is a witch hunt! I'm not doing it! I'm not doing it! It's really easy to scream at somebody when you're not face to face or you're a woman. He's real brave on the phone. He's real brave on a 14-year-old girl. Then to Donnie VanCallis, another request for a lie. Erase our texts. Leave it right there for just a second. All right. Let's go to the next photograph. This is the photo of the helmet as it was taken on that night, so you can see it in all of its glory. Next photographs show you the helmet. Now we can see what we didn't see before, all the clean streaks on it. And more important than the clean streaks, the lint still on the helmet from having been cleaned so recently. And anybody that's cleaning anything with socks, sitting on the socks, you know how much lint socks leave. He was cleaning the bottom of those shoes, putting the crystal with socks. And he's cleaning this helmet with socks. There are the K-Swiss shoes. You can see that tread pattern is absolutely nothing like the tread pattern. Now, the importance of this photograph and the next one, look how beat up those shoes are. Now let's go to the next photograph. Let's look at all the photographs we have of how clean the Nikes are. Why would you throw away the clean, nice, expensive pair of Nikes and keep those garbage K-Swiss? Unless they have something to hide. And more important is the number of times we showed you these shoes, just to validate how recently he had them. That's in the summer of 2013. That's November of 2013. That's December of 2013. That is April. This is, we showed you photographs from November, December, and we showed you photographs from April, February. This one is April in the car. What's nice, again, about this one is this pattern right here. This pattern is shown very specifically right here. Look at that when you get back. That's the same pattern. That was in April. And this one, though, just a flash, was June 18th. So as of June 18th of 2014, he still had these shoes, and they were in really good shape. But you know what's, like, really creepy? The exhibit that we pulled that shoe off of came from a video where he's sitting in the car videotaping a young girl with brunette hair in a parking lot in the car next to him. Next. Well, take that down for just a second so they can hear me. If Penny, her iPhone, where April's familiar, James VanCallis' phone is his Benedict Arnold. It's his Judas. Because look at the information we got about Mr. VanCallis from his phone. We're going to show you some before and after photographs of him on the motorcycle. modifications of his motorcycle which make his motorcycle unique came from all of his cameras in his phone. The photos and videos of him in his Nike Jordans came from his phone. The video of how quiet the motorcycle is came from his phone. The photo of his red tinted hair, I don't want to hear any more questions about red tinted hair. We found a photograph on his phone he took of him with red tinted hair. The photo of him wearing the helmet, the mustache visible, came from his phone. The times and locations of his phone before, during, and after the murder came from his phone. That critical text message from his brother came from his phone. And that creepy video came from his phone. I'm going to play that motorcycle video for you. This is Sandra, his sister, on the motorcycle. A couple of interesting things about it.
Yeah. His wipeouts are always like...
What's your name now? Don't get in your man's way. Hurt her.
Stop it right there. Can you see how far away this is to see how clear that light is? So when Mr. Buchanan tells you he can see that light from an extended distance, there it is, right there, on a video from his own phone. That's how far you can see that light, and even farther back would be my guess. Now, let's listen to how quiet the bike is.
Good. Not that good.
I drop him.
Jeremy, can I ask you to come down here?
You know what, right? Don't put somebody on my don't put somebody on a
Did you see Mr. VanCallis in that video? Did you notice whether he had a beard or not? That camera panned right past him. That's how fast Amy Spinella went past him. And he was in there. Did you look for that? Did you see it? Or you're going to have to go back and stop. That's the situation she faced. That fast. Going right by. Now, during the faux demonstration that was done on the motorcycle, there was this issue that Buchanan was talking about him being up and the motorcycle being lower, and then Mr. Sheik talking about, well, when there's weight on the motorcycle, it's even lower, and that's why James VanCallis is trying to get down here. Well, we did a little bit of our own stilling here, okay? Here's a photograph of that bike as it sits without any weight on it. You can see where that cowling is. And now you can see where it is when there's somebody on it. So again, Buchanan is right. Go ahead and put the rest of it up. Might be slightly different angles, but there's no doubt. And also, if you would, take the red line off for just a second, if you could. We go back, whatever. This is not a very large bike. Everybody thinks Harleys and everything else. When you see his sister, regular-sized woman, that bike is not that large. When everybody says it's an enduro or a moped or an off-road bike, there it is. And with that weight down, that means he's up at an angle. Buchanan's on that bike looking down. It once again confirms that he can see a mustache. Hold on just a second. We'll go to the motorcycle comparisons now. There's a photograph of what that bike looked when he bought it. And then let's just confirm the modifications. This went from white to a gray, like a Bondo. The white here stayed white. This is critical to every one of the photographs, these two items. Number one, that fender, which is white and broken up by the bar that holds the light, which is right back here. And then this white fender is now black. And that's why that disappears in almost every one of those photographs. That's a very unique thing to have two different colors. You've got the blue here, which is the only blue left on the bike except for that. That's why it's so important. When Reschke and Gail Stein see blue, it's prominent. It's right there. And then you'll see from the videos, again, you've got, this is a white cowling, and now it's black, which is why it disappears. The mirrors have changed a little bit. You have taken off this white thing, and it becomes black, and it has then those letters there. There's a reason why you don't see those letters in the cost video. We'll talk about that in just a second. So you have those different modifications are made. This is what makes this bike unique. This is what makes this bike a fingerprint, because he made these changes, and these changes are visible. They're not standard changes. You have these exhibits in the back. We can provide them for you digitally like we have here. When you're deliberating, if you'd like to see them up on this screen, we have a clean computer, we have the discs, and we can roll this screen in so that you can do your own analysis. You don't have to have me bothering you or Mr. Sheik bothering you. Do it yourselves. Look at it. Talk amongst yourselves. But this white spot here, that's the car heart. All right? This here is this. That's the recreation one. This here is this. This split here is this split here. The light here is not on here. You can't see a fender here because it's black in the shadow. You can't see a fender here because it's black and in the shadow. Now, poor Jason, despite my teasing him, maybe he's not Fred Flintstone, I thought more about like Barney Rubble. He's got to walk the bike like this, standing straight up. Therefore, this is going to be exposed. The reason you don't see it here is because the pegs are right here. And when you're on that bike at 6 foot some, and your legs are up here like this, that's why this is blocked. This just simply can't be seen. But what you can see here, white high top tension, clear as day. Next. These are some of the images that we put in. We put them on one page. This is the back camera at Mr. Cross's house, and then this is a picture of the bike. What's critical about this, once again, you've got the white here, the white here. You've got the black here with the black fender raised like that. The most important part of this is this motorcycle has 2 different size tires. That's his motorcycle. What do you see here? 2 different size tires. Next. Now, this is what we did. This is the gas station one where he admits that it's him. And this is the cost one, and this is the bike itself. Again, it's the white back, the big helmet, the bar right here, the gray right here. He admitted he was at the Marathon gas station. That's him on his bike at the Marathon gas station, and that's that bike in front of Mr. Cross's house. Which photograph? Okay, let's turn it over. I'm almost done. That's been a long time. Dr. Petrangelo looked at that bruise above April Millsap's eye and said that bruise was consistent with this piece right here on this motorcycle. She said it was blunt force trauma, and that bruise was consistent. But we put them next to one another for you. Here's that piece. It lines up. That lines up. That lines up. And you can see when you get this in, that ridge lines up with that ridge. This is what knocked her up. Cameras not to show the next 2 photographs.
The media is instructed not to take any pictures of the photograph. photographs that will be shown to you. You're going to be subject to contempt proceedings.
Is there really a question of rape in this case? There's one and only one reason why you would leave a 14-year-old girl like this. He has no reason to embarrass her. He has no personal connection with her. To embarrass somebody means to imply that you have an emotional connection. There wasn't any. They were strangers. This case was a random act, which is why the village of Armada and all the surrounding areas were scared to their core. Because April Millsap is somebody's daughter. She's Jennifer's daughter. But she could have been anybody's daughter that day on the trail. Now we know from Mr. Cervenak, well, I always have an obligation, I feel, to do the jury instructions a little bit further, so let's do a couple of those right now. Let me break down essentially what first-degree felony murder is. Just put them all up there. You can read that, but this is what it is. If while you are committing a felony, a crime of some sort, the victim dies during that crime, it's felony murder. We've clearly shown beyond a reasonable doubt that she was murdered. Felony murder, then, is what's the felony, the enumerated felony that precipitated it, which means what did she die, what was he doing when she died? There are two options that you have here. The first is larceny. We know that he stole. Can you just flip the larceny? Do we have the larceny one up here? Number 3. Okay. Essentially, did we spell out larceny? Okay. We did spell out kidnapping. Go to kidnapping first. Yeah. Really can read the instruction. If that photograph doesn't convince you that was rape, I don't know that there's anything I can tell you that will. There's no reason to leave her that way unless you were going to rape her. But kidnapping, knowingly restraining another person that you intended to engage in criminal sexual penetration. 3. All right, back it up. Just left it at that. There wasn't any reason for him to remove her from the trail, to knock her out, put her on the ground, and put her in that way, unless he intended to kidnap her. Read the instructions to kidnapping. All he has to do is move her and intend to do something. That photograph shows he intended to rape her. We know that he intended to do that. He had to kidnap her to get her to that point, because there is no way she willfully went there. She was unconscious. And the second one is larceny. All we would have to show is that he died. She died during the course of his robbing her. Well, we know he left with her backpack and her phone and the dog's leash and the dog's collar. That's larceny. And larceny even indicates, and you'll see in the instruction, you don't even have to leave the premises. You could actually pick it up and put it down before you leave Home Depot. If you intended to do it at the time, that's enough. This was a completed act. The larceny, the kidnapping were completed, the rape was attempted. And then it's felony murder. Then kidnapping, that's the instruction, and then we have the assault with intent to commit sexual penetration, which you've already seen. If you have questions on the instructions, you can always send notes back out, and we'll answer those questions. Now, I know that Mr. Cervenak had indicated in his testimony that, oh, I got it up here. There were 5 categories. Well, he listed 5 categories, and that's where Mr. Sheik got this, well, 80%. But remember when Mr. Daly questioned him, there were 8 categories total. Then you have levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then you also have a category of unsuitable. You have a category of elimination exclusion. You have a category of inconclusive non-association. So there are 8 categories. So if we use, and it just must scare the engineers, the skewed version, well, of 8, there's only 1. So now we're down to 50%. Okay? But the reality is, it wasn't excluded. In fact, it was identified as potential. But that's an expert having to come in here and hold to scientific standards for you. But when it comes to the bike, when it comes to credibility, you're the judges of that. You're also the judges of the patterns itself. To take these shoes back and look at the bottoms of these shoes and compare it to the photographs that were introduced. You will see these herringbone patterns, and then you will see for yourself. I mean, take a look. Don't think that matches that? Do your own. We did one for you. Watch this. Those were the shoes that were worn by James VanCallis that he stomped the life out of April Millsap with. I ask you to convict him on every count. Thank you.
Take 15 minutes to be back here at 10:50. If you want, please, you can. If you're smoking, there's no objection to that. Again, you're not supposed to talk to anyone, listen to any conversation if you do. And I would suggest, after the deputy, you need to have a cigarette.